Alright, everybody, hope you're doing well this evening. Welcome to a Fix Your Gut News and Views, the week of January 22nd, 2021. I am your host, John Brisson. This evening, we are going to discuss some news releases and stories from this week. Hopefully, I'll be able to bring you some information, maybe give some perspective, and hopefully be able to improve your health. I am John Brisson, the author of Fix Your Gut on Amazon. I am the editor-in-chief at fixyourgut.com. You can go there if you're having any digestive issues. I also offer coaching on the website too as well. I've coached many people. I've seen tens of thousands of stool tests. I've helped many people in the past, and hopefully I can help you. So let's begin. Alcohol consumption linked to portion of cancer incidence and mortality report shows. A new study finds that alcohol consumption accounts for a considerable portion of cancer incident and mortality in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. The article, which appears in Cancer Epidemiology, states that the proportion of cancer cases attributable to alcohol consumption ranged from a high of 6.7% in Delaware to a low of 2.9% in Utah. Similarly, Delaware had the highest proportion of alcohol-related cancer deaths, 4.5%, and Utah had the lowest, 1.9%. I wonder if it's because there's less alcohol consumption in Utah because of the Mormon population, and the Mormon population tends to be healthier, too. So maybe that's why. And in addition, Utah is further south than Delaware, so, greater sunlight exposure, more people will be outside, greater vitamin D production. Maybe that's why. Study conducted by Farhad Islami, medical doctor, PhD, and colleagues at the American Cancer Society is the first to estimate contemporary proportions and counts of alcohol attributable cancer causes and death for all states. Data shows the proportions were generally higher in New England and western states and lower in the Midwestern and southern states. Again, sunlight. I wonder. Or a greater consumption of alcohol. But however, you would think, me growing up in the South, a lot of people like to drink a lot of beer. So, this information is important for prioritizing state-level cancer prevention and control efforts to reduce alcohol consumption and the burden of alcohol-related cancer, said Dr. Islami. The proportion of alcohol-related cancers was far greater for some individual cancer types. For oral cavity pharyngeal cancer cases, for example, it ranged from 36% in Utah to 62.5% in Delaware. Wow. And was 45% or more in 45 states in the District of Columbia. By sex, alcohol-related cancer causes and deaths for most evaluated cancer types were higher among men, in particular reflecting higher levels of alcohol consumption among men. Yep. In the United States, on average, alcohol consumption is accounted for 4.8% of cancer cases and 3.2% of cancer deaths, or about 75,200 cancer cases and 18,950 cancer cases or deaths annually during 2013 and 2016. In addition, the authors say healthcare providers and public health practitioners can educate the community to expand the current limited awareness of the cancer-related risks of alcohol consumption. The American Cancer Society's Guideline for Diet and Physical Activity for Cancer Prevention states that it's best not to consume alcohol. For those who do drink, consumption should be limited to no more than 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men. Yep. And if you're going to drink, a high-quality, low-sulfite wine, like Dry Farm's wines, however, someone is intolerant to sulfate or has histamine intolerance, the wine may trigger symptoms in them like headache, itching, hives, increased asthma and allergies from the histamine. But it seems to be better tolerated. Or, you're a very clean vodka, like Grey Goose, for example, if you're going to drink. But I don't recommend it. I mean, overall, alcohol is a toxin, and it's not good for your body. There are studies of occasional wine consumption might be good for the probiotic microbiome. It might be good for the mitochondria, but I'm pretty sure you can get those benefits from just eating a healthy diet. And avoiding antibiotics as much as possible, and stress reduction as far as your microbiome is concerned, more than just the benefit that you may get from consuming wine. Brain pressure disorder that causes headache, vision problems on rise. A new study found a brain pressure disorder called idiopathic intracranial hypertension is on the rise, and the increase corresponds with rising obesity rates. The study is published in the January 2021 online issue of Neurology, the medical journal of the American Academy of Neurology. The study also found that for women, socioeconomic factors like income, education, and housing may play a role in their risk. Idiopathic intracranial hypertension is when the pressure in the fluid surrounding the brain rises. It can mimic the symptoms of a brain tumor, causing chronic disabling headaches, vision problems, and in rare cases, vision loss. It's most often diagnosed in women of childbearing age. Treatment is often weight loss. In some cases, surgery may be required. The considerable increase in idiopathic intracranial hypertension we found may be due to many factors, but likely most due to rising obesity rates. I wonder if this is increased blood pressure when you're obese. It says study author William Owen Pickrell, PhD, MRCP of Swansea University in Wales in the United Kingdom, and member of the American Academy of Neurology. What is more surprising from our research is that women who experience poverty or other socioeconomic disadvantages may have an increased risk independent of obesity. So stress. Maybe stress? For the study, researchers used a national healthcare database in Wales to analyze 35 million patient years of data over a 15-year period between 2003 and 2017. They identified 1,765 people with idiopathic intracranial hypertension during that time. Of the group, 85% were women. Researchers recorded body mass index measurements for study participants. I wonder if testosterone gives a benefit keeping men less likely to have idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Maybe not. I don't know. I guess we'll see if that happens to be the case. Researchers recorded body mass index measurements for study participants. Body mass index is calculated by dividing weight by height. For every one person with a disorder, researchers compared 3 people with it or were matched for gender, age, or socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status of each person with the disorder was determined by where they lived using a national scoring system that considers factors like income, employment, health, education, and access to services. People in the study were divided into 5 groups ranging from those with few socioeconomic advantages to those with the most. Overall, researchers found a 6-fold increase in the number of cases of the disorder over the course of the study. In 2003, for every 100,000 people, 12 were living with the disorder, compared to 76 people in 2017. Wow. I wonder if not increased non-native EMF exposure, from the more frequent use of cell phones and routers. I wonder if that maybe have something to play with this as well. It's just a thought. It's not. It's not completely a something that's been studied yet for it, but it's just something I'm thinking of, that maybe a reduction of mitochondrial health is and just overall cardiovascular health from being obese and from increased non-native EMF exposure and increased just poor diets in general. Something's causing this to increase more than just people becoming aware of it. So I'll keep you guys up to date on it. I've seen some people in some of the Facebook groups that I follow have been dealing with idiopathic intracranial hypertension. I think there's probably a microbiome link to it as well. Maybe a dysbiotic flora going out of the gut from increased gut permeability or leaky gut, and then entering blood circulation, and then entering the brain. And there's might be many reasons why blood-brain barrier is more porous. Difference again would one of the main ones being increased non-native EMF exposure, which would make a difference between the almost decade span in the study. So that's interesting. I guess we shall see. Hey Sniff, hey Matt, welcome. Yeah, maybe I should talk about crypto one day. NAD plus can restore age-related muscular deterioration, research finds. The older we grow, the weaker our muscles get, riddling old age with frailty and physical disability. But that doesn't only affect the individual, it also creates a significant burden on public health care, and yet research efforts into the biological processes and biomarkers that define muscle aging have not yet defined the underlying causes. Now, a team of scientists from the lab of Johan Awerks at EPFL's School of Life Sciences looked at the issue through a different angle: the similarities between muscle aging and degenerative muscle diseases. They have discovered protein aggregates that deposit in skeletal tissues during natural aging, and that blocking this can prevent the detrimental features of muscle aging. The study is published in Cell Reports. Yes, Sniff. Kale has a lot of anti-nutrients in it. It can be very rough on the colon, and many people end up having issues with the ingestion of raw kale trying to be healthy, especially if it's put in a blender. And there's also conflicting evidence of whether kale has high or low levels of oxalates. So if it does have high oxalates, it can inflame the gut and also lead to joint pain if it leaks out of the gut. The oxalate crystals do and settle into bones or joints, and can cause kidney stones. During age-associated muscle diseases such as inclusion body myositis, our cells struggle to maintain correct protein folding, leading to these misfolding proteins to participate in forming toxic protein aggregates within the muscles. Well, sometimes folding proteins can be turned into prions. That's not good. We're going to talk about beta amyloid plaques next, huh? The most prominent component of these protein aggregates is beta amyloid, just like the amyloid plaques in the brains of patients with Alzheimer's disease. In the study, the scientists identify amyloid-like protein aggregates in aged muscles from different species, from the nematode C, elegans, all the way to humans. In addition, they also found that these aggregates also impair mitochondrial function. That's true. Although aggregate proteins have suggested to contribute to brain aging, this is the first time they've been shown to contribute to muscle aging and directly damage the mitochondria. Wow, okay. Whew, okay, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I mean, it would make sense, right? I mean, if prions, or even, folded proteins, misshapen proteins, even if they're not quote-unquote prions, even though a prion is a misshapen protein, but if they are able to cause, many diseases like prion disorders, you have Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease in humans, you have Kuru for cannibals, so it's interesting that if the amyloid plaques, which I believe the cause of Alzheimer's disease is from herpes simplex 1, when you get cold sores, that's human herpes simplex 1 virus. And there's multiple studies now to show that it's able to chronically infect the brain in certain people that may be more prone to it. Maybe they have a porous blood-brain barrier from living an unhealthy life, or being constantly exposed to non-native EMF radiation and strong exposure to it. And they end up, the virus ends up becoming active in the brain chronically. And the amyloid plaques may be from either aluminum entering the brain as a toxic metal, and the amyloid plaques are trying to cover the aluminum because aluminum gets in because the blood-brain barrier is more porous. Or the amyloid plaques are trying to shield off the human herpes virus 1 when the white blood cells capture it. It's quite complex. Well, I guess in the brain it wouldn't be white blood cells. It would be microglial cells. Microglial cells dying may be covered by amyloid plaques. But and then also, Alzheimer's disease has been linked to decreased insulin utilization of the brain, also what's known as type 3 diabetes. So it's my belief that human herpes virus 1 is the singular cause of the autoimmune condition Alzheimer's, but you can have certain things like an APO3 genetic mutation, or polymorphism is the correct term, that can lead to a more porous blood-brain barrier because you're not able to process fats properly. So there's many different causes or many different consequences of the human herpes virus and chronically infecting the brain, but it does happen. So this study shows that not only can you have amyloid-like protein aggregates, which in the muscle, just like you have amyloid protein production in the brain. And a lot of that does come from mitochondrial dysfunction, which are mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cells where the electron transport chain in the Krebs cycle occurs. That's where your cell makes its energy. So if if you're in poor health, your mitochondria are also going to be in poor health too, and they're going to produce more free radicals, and so it's interesting. But can this formation of protein aggregates be reversed? To answer this, the researchers fed worms the vitamin nicotinamide riboside and the anti-tumor agent olaparib, both of which boost the levels of nicotine adenine dinucleotide, NAD+, a biomolecule that's essential for maintaining mitochondrial function. That's true. And whose levels decline during aging. In the worms, the two compounds turn on the defense systems of the mitochondria even when provided at advanced age, turning on the so-called mitochondrial quality control system, reduced to age-related amyloid protein aggregates, and improve the worm's fitness and lifespan. The scientists then moved on to human muscle tissue taken from AIDS subjects and IBM patients. Turning on the same mitochondrial quality control systems produced similar improvements in protein and mitochondrial homeostasis. Yes, Sniff, resveratrol is very, very good for improving mitochondrial function and reducing oxidative stress. So that might be why it helped your lungs. By reducing inflammation within your lungs. By reducing mitochondrial oxidative stress is by one marker. The encouraging results led the researchers to test nicotinamide riboside in aged mice. The treatment also activated the mitochondrial defense systems and reduced the number and size of amyloid aggregates in different skeletal muscle tissues. Wow, okay. Drugs that boost mitochondrial quality control could therefore be tested in the clinic to reverse these age-related proteotoxic aggregates and rejuvenate tissues, said Mario Romani, the first author of the study. Yes, I have an extensive blog on NAD and a video on fixyourgut.com and a video about it on this YouTube channel. It's a great supplement for improving mitochondrial health and improving energy production. Eggs reveal what may happen to the brain on impact. What causes brain concussions? Is a direct translational or rotational impact? This is one of the research areas currently being explored by Qian Hong Wu's lab at Villanova University. Our brains consist of soft matter bathed in watery cerebral spinal fluid inside a hard skull. An impact on the hard skull is transmitted through a thin layer of cerebral spinal fluid within the subarachnoid space to the soft brain matter. In Physics of Fluids from AIP Publishing, Wu and co-authors Jay Ling and Rungun Nathan described studying another system with the same features in eggs to search for answers. An egg resembles the brain because its soft yolk is bathed within a liquid egg, white inside a hard shell. Considering that in most concussion brain injuries a skull does not break, Wu wanted to find out if it was possible to break or deform the egg yolk without breaking the eggshell. The researchers did a simple experiment using an egg scrambled for which they could see the rotational force could easily break the egg yolk and make it mix with the egg white. In terms of basic concepts behind this work, a soft capsule, membrane-bound soft matter, is bathed within a contained liquid. The capsule has an impermeable membrane separating the liquid inside the capsule from the outside. Two types of impacts can be imposed on the outer container. A translational impact is one that hits the container directly, while a rotational impact occurs when the outer container is accelerated or decelerated rotating. The latter arises naturally in sports when helmets are not round. Consider, for instance, the pair of stiffening ridges behind many ice hockey helmet designs. The researchers discovered something quite counterintuitive and very surprising. Direct translational impact does not cause the egg deformation, while rotational deceleration causes tremendous egg yolk deformation. This finding sheds light on the motion and deformation of our brain when the head is exposed to sudden external impacts. We suspect the rotational, especially decelerational rotational impact, is more harmful to brain matter, said Wu. The large deformation of brain matter during the process induces a stretch of neurons and causes the damage. The finding explains why boxers will very likely faint if hit on the chin. Oh, wow, okay. Considering the chin is the farthest point from the neck, hitting on the chin could cause the highest rotational acceleration and deceleration of the head, he said. When it comes to concussions, which are a serious issue for public health, it remains unclear how the brain is injured and how to avoid such injuries, said Wu. Critical thinking, along with simple experiments within the kitchen, led to a series of systemic studies to examine the mechanisms that cause egg yolk deformation, Wu said. We hope to apply the lessons learned from it to study the brain biomechanics, as well as other physical processes that involve soft capsules in a liquid environment, such as red blood cells. At first a study of its kind, this work provides a new perspective for understanding the response of a membrane-bound soft object to sudden external impacts. This new perspective will interest those designing helmets. Prenatal BPA exposure may contribute to the male bias of autism spectrum disorder. A new study by researchers of Chulalongkorn University, Tohoku University, and the George Washington University is the first to identify autism candidate genes that may be responsible for the sex-specific effects of bisphenol A on the brain. It suggests that bisphenol A may serve as an environmental factor that contributes to the prevalence of male bias in autism spectrum disorders. Add this to another list. Add BPA, bisphenol A, which also, by the way, reduces testosterone production and even retards natural puberty within boys. And bisphenol A, of course, was widespread, used in plastics and in infant bottles. It's a very, very strong toxin, especially to males. Especially to males. I mean, they were poisoning us with these plasticizers. Yeah, we do sniff. Yeah, I try to use glass bottles as much as I possibly can. Even polypropylene plastic bottles could have issues with the plasticizers that are used. Even though they're not BPA, there still could be problems with them too. BPA is widely used in many products in our daily life and abundant in micro and nanoplastics found in the environment, food, or the human placenta. It's thought to be an environmental influence on autism spectrum disorder, a neurodevelopment disorder characterized by impaired social communication, restricted interests, and repetitive behaviors. Autism spectrum disorder is a major public health challenge around the world, with roughly 1 in 54 children in the United States being diagnosed. Many studies have shown BPA impairs neurological functions known to be disrupted in autism spectrum disorder, making scientists believe that BPA may be one of the key environmental risk factors for ASD. Wow, okay. However, we still don't know how BPA can cause or increase the susceptibility of ASD and whether it also plays a role in the male bias of the disorder, said Assistant Professor Dr. T. Wart Sarchana, head of the Systems Neuroscience of Autism and Psychiatric Disorders Research Unit in the Facility of Allied Health Sciences at Chulalongkorn University. In fact, one of our recent studies has demonstrated that prenatal exposure and BPA alter the expression of several ASD candidate genes in the hippocampus in a sex-dependent pattern, but the link between the dysregulation of ASD candidate genes and impaired neurological functions is still lacking. In this study, we showed exposure to bisphenol A during the gestational period decreased neuronal viability and neuronal density in the hippocampus and impaired learning memory in only the male offspring. Wow! Okay, interesting. The expression of several ASD-related genes in the hippocampus was dysregulated and showed sex-specific correlations with neuronal viability, neurotogenesis, and other learning memory. Under prenatal BPA exposure, these genes may play important roles in determining the risk of autism spectrum disorder and its high prevalence in male, said Sir Rangrat Thogkorn, a PhD candidate and first author in the study. The differences in the effects of BPA found in our study strongly suggest that BPA negatively impacts the male and female offspring brain through different molecular mechanisms. We're progressively working on these issues to identify the sex-specific molecular mechanism of BPA in the brain. Understanding the effects of BPA and its molecular mechanisms in autism spectrum disorder may lead to the changes in the policy regarding the use of BPA or even the destruction of the molecular targets of autism spectrum disease treatment in the future, concluded Dr. Sarachana. So even if BPA isn't the singular cause of autism, it is definitely poisoning males, and it's poisoning our youth. And it needs to no longer be used for anything. It is an environmental toxin. It is a toxin to human health. It is a toxin to wildlife. Could altering meal times prevent development of type 2 diabetes? An innovative new study is set to examine if changing our meal times to earlier or later in the day can reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Led by Dr. Denise Robertson, Professor Jonathan Johnston, and postgraduate researcher Chantel Lynch from the University of Surrey, the study outlined in the Journal Nutrition Bulletin will investigate if changing the time we eat during the day could reduce risk factors such as obesity and cholesterol levels that are typically associated with the development of type 2 diabetes. The team of researchers will also, for the first time, investigate via a series of interviews with participants and their family and friends the impact of such changes on home life, work, social commitments, and whether cohabitants of those make such modifications or influence after their own meal timings and habits and results. So, the interesting thing about this study is something that kind of we already know, which is when we eat or don't eat may be critical for health. I definitely recommend people read The Circadian Code by Sitchin Panda. It's a great book on circadian rhythm research. Sitchin Panda is an expert in circadian rhythms. But pretty much we are supposed to fast during the evening. You're supposed to break your fast. And your biggest meal is supposed to be breakfast. The average person should eat 2 to 3 meals a day, and your last meal should be before 7 p.m. At least, because the liver starts to shrink at night to repair itself, and if you eat after 7 or 8 p.m. after the sun has gone down, it hinders your liver's ability to shrink, to heal, because it has to release bile into the gallbladder, and the gallbladder releases bile into the duodenum to help, eventually digest the food that you just eaten. So I'll put the link to this article in the chat. It's very worth reading, and I'm actually writing an article right now for Fix Your Gut, which will hopefully be up this week, of when is the appropriate times per a human circadian rhythm to eat for optimal health. Overactive food quality control system triggers allergies, scientists say. Food allergies have been increasing dramatically across the developed world for more than 30 years. For instance, as many as 8% of children in the United States now experience potentially lethal immune system responses to such foods as milk, tree nuts, fish, and shellfish. But scientists have struggled to explain why that is. A prevailing theory has been that food allergies arise because of an absence of natural pathogens such as parasites in the modern environment, which in turn makes the part of the immune system that involved to deal with such natural threats hypersensitive to certain foods. Jane North, correct, yes. It's different for exercise. Hooper could probably speak more. Jason Hooper, my partner at Fix Your Gut, he might be able to speak more to the performance aspect, but still, even per circadian rhythm. Now, granted, someone who needs to consume more calories may eat smaller meals frequently during the day, but you still would not want to eat at night. Hooper and I both definitely agree on that, if all possible. In a paper published January 14th in the journal Cell, 4 Yale immunobiologists propose an expanded explanation for the rise of food allergies. Exaggerated activation of our food quality control system, a complex and highly involved program designed to protect us against eating harmful foods. The presence of unnatural substances, including processed food, or environmental chemicals such as dishwashing detergent in the modern environment, as well as absence of natural microbial exposure, play a role in disrupting the food quality control system, they argue. The theory can lay groundwork for the future treatment and prevention of food allergies, the scientists suggest. We can't devise the ways to prevent or treat food allergies until we fully understand underlying biology, said co-author Ruslan Medsitov, Sterling Professor of Immunobiology and investigator for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. You can't be a good car mechanic if you don't know how a normal car works. The quality control system present in the biology of all animals includes sensory gardens. If something smells or tastes bad, we don't eat it. And there are sentinels in our gut if we consume toxins. They're detected and expelled. In the latter case, a part of the immune system, as well as the parasympathetic arm of the nervous system, also mobilized to help neutralize the threat. That's so true. So pretty much, again, the reason why there's a rise on food allergies is the destruction of the microbiome and the hindering of the immune system by increased antibiotic use, increased medication use, increased use of drugs, improper circadian rhythm, being indoors more often and not getting enough sunlight for endogenous vitamin D production, non-native EMF, increased exposure, increased stress and cortisol levels. So yeah, there's multiple reasons, but also an overabundance of hygiene. Now granted, I don't want it to go back to how it was during, what was that book that was written? Exposing how toxic the meat industry was in the early 1900s. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I don't want to go back to being like the most unhygienic, food processing imaginable. However, our over cleanliness has led to weaker immune systems. That's obvious. And, that's, what this paper aims at to get at. And I actually might write about it for next week's blog. Feces and algorithms, artificial intelligence to map our intestinal bacteria. Both past and present scientists suspected the intestines are playing a role in various diseases. Present-day studies focus on the intestinal flora role in physical diseases such as diabetes and overweight, while others seek to establish connections between the intestinal flora, e.g. autism, schizophrenia, and depression. Even modern-day scientists have difficulty studying around 5,000 to 1,000 different species among the approximately 100 billion active bacteria in our intestinal tract. It could be even higher than that. But yes, they are using most of your standard gut tests. They're using DNA. The only test that uses RNA is Viome, and I've interpreted tens of thousands of these tests at this point for clients over the 8 odd years I've been coaching. And they've gotten better. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Sometimes even human culturing can be more successful than artificial intelligence analyzation of a PCR, DNA, or RNA test. But they're refining it. It may get better. Maybe. All right, everybody. Visit fixyourgut.com for blog articles, for health information. Also offer coaching there. I also sell my book, Fix Your Gut, both there and Amazon. Take care, everybody. See you next week. God bless.